All right, let me fix my side and then we'll get you guys going. All right. You guys see that okay? You should be able to see the presentation. If not, just hit me up. I think it shows it's working on my side. Uh, so what the topic is, and obviously, hormones are a and can have a big impact on on how we feel on a day-to-day basis, help in the journey of fat loss as well. And there's ways to address hormones and make them more optimal from a natural standpoint. And that's kind of some touch points I will talk about today, more built around nutrition. So uh, what we're going to get into is how meal timing and structure support your energy, fat loss recovery, and then give you guys some tips and tricks on, making sure your energy levels are stable as much as we can get them. Um, Ways to support the hormones properly, and then consistency is going to be always key. You always hear me talk about doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to be close enough. And then consistency. I'll talk a lot about the consistency with just how your systems and functionality will like consistency, and specifically with nutrition as well. So, so just to overview and reiterate with hormones in general, sometimes we pinpoint specific, right? We'll talk about testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, but there's a lot more than just those. But here's an overview of hormones and what they do as far as some of the regulation. Hunger and fullness is a big driver with the hormones, energy levels, obviously fat storage, and then stress response. And then the nutritional timing can influence all this and these daily signals as well. Now, there's other things that will impact these. Again, the things that we talk about, central nervous system, so your stress responses, sleep, resistance training, those impact hormones as well. So I'm going to talk more along the lines of some of the nutritional components, timing and nutrition. What does that look like? How they're impacted. So the three big ones that are, and all of them are right, because it's nutrients and what you consume from a nutrient, or if you have some nutrient deficiencies. I'll give you an example. When I went through this past year, I it's, we hired a company called Elevations to help us with optimization of our hormones. I had some issues with my thyroid. I was Hashimoto's, and I had some other deficiencies going on. Even though we eat perfect, it can be challenging to get all your nutrient value in. So when we did all our blood work and testing, I had to go through and take some specific supplements to help my hormones. Again, so there's a lot more to this, but I'm going to hit on certain components with you guys, and then um, the big one is insulin. We talk about that a lot, and a lot of times people don't know, insulin is a hormone. I shouldn't do this, but it is a hormone. It just sometimes we forget that. So cortisol is as well, and then leptin and ghrelin. Um, Again, I talk about this. You don't need perfection. We just need consistency and getting close enough to the markers that's going to move the needle forward. So as we dive into this, this is a simple explanation of insulin. Manage your blood sugar, you know, and that can impact a lot of the system, and it can set you up for improved energy, reduced cravings, supportive fat loss if we have really good insulin levels and our insulin is stable. So that's what we talk a lot about, and I'll hit it in this presentation as well, is consumption of protein, because what it does is it helps stabilize insulin response, and that's going to be good for you guys from energy, right? Cravings, and then obviously, if we're in some type of deficit, we're allowing our body to get into some type of fat oxidation where we're utilizing fat as a fuel source. So, so here's key principles for stabilizing your insulin. And another thing we don't talk about, we talk about it a lot, and it's one of those things that over the years, I've worked with a lot of diabetics. Specifically, we had inside our facility, when we had our brick and mortar. I would have new clients who were diabetics, and I said, "Hey, the first thing you're going to notice your A1C is going to drop once we get you a couple months in with resistance training." So I think most people, and again, we talk about this. Uh, Lean tissue is so important. So muscle is so important to help stabilize. Um, just one second, to help stabilize your insulin responses. So Um, and that's one thing that's not talked about enough. Um, it's such a foundational component. But so key principles with insulin stability is protein in each meal, specifically, and if it has a carb paired with it, you can counteract that. So it's going to help with your stabilization of your insulin response and blood sugar response. So you want to pair the carbs with proteins. Avoid long periods of unstructured uh, food consumption, and specifically if we're consuming more carbohydrate based, because that's going to really play some issues or put some issues on uh, your your insulin response. So what it will do is if you're grazing, it's not going to be able to stabilize your insulin, and specifically if it's a carbohydrate. So it will we'll just shoot it up and it'll drop and shoot it up and it'll drop. So these are just small concepts that will impact insulin responses. And then cortisol, it's another one that we talk about. You hear more and more data points on cortisol. It's going to be the stress hormone. Now, where we get in trouble if cortisol is not necessarily bad. We need it. It's a mechanism used in a lot of different formats. Now, chronic elevated cortisol is not going to be healthy, and it's going to cause other issues and can cause increased fat storage because it's going to disrupt other hormonal balances. So disrupt sleep as well. So then and it's kind of counterproductive because many times if a person's not sleeping well, their cortisol is going to be a little bit higher. So you got to work through those components and figure out why your sleep's off, and that could be some other hormonal imbalances as well. It can increase cravings as well. So cortisol, not necessarily bad, but chronic elevated cortisol. Again, I'm going to go back to not nutrition based, but central nervous system based. If you're able to control your central nervous system better, so fight or flight, our body does not know the difference if we're in true stress or not. From a mental standpoint, we can mimic and think we're under stress and cause all of our fight or flight hormones to kick in, and cortisol is going to be one that's going to increase. Ways to counteract and get better with stress responses is practicing breathing techniques. So diaphragmatic breathing, central nervous system driven, it will help you pull back out of that stress response. I've been using breathing techniques probably almost 7 years now. I started with the Wim Hof, which is cold exposure and breathing, but then I've done more just breathing and I use the cold component to really help me because when you get into the cold, your body thinks it's under stress, right? You're going to die or whatever. Uh, the cold plunge or cold exposure helps you practice your central nervous system response so you can pull yourself right back out of the stress response by breathing. So when you first get in a cold plunge, bam, stress hits you, you do the diaphragmatic breathing, you're able to pull yourself back into relaxation. So it's a tool that's used. Obviously, there's a ton of other benefits just to cold in general, but that's one of the concepts that people don't talk about when you do cold exposure. What you're doing is you're training your body to come out of a stress response. So the central nervous system, and that has a huge impact of cortisol. So nutrition, and I talked about the central nervous system. So this is more nutritional based. Skipping meals or under eating for extended period of time or consistently. Now, obviously, we have many of you, not all, many of you in some type of caloric deficit to some degree. And the reason we don't pull your calories too hard, it's another stress. And we can only tolerate that stress for extended period of time before it starts causing some other problems. So, you know, um, it's not necessarily always bad to undereat, right? To be in a caloric deficit, but it depends on how deep it is, and then obviously how often. There's just ways to manipulate that. So, how to kind of uh, counteract some of the cortisol responses is balanced meals. So I just talked about that a little bit more. Protein, when is it consumed, how often, things of that nature. Carbohydrate manipulation as well improves recovery because muscle glycogen, and we deplete those stores with more resistance type activity. So resistance training in general, and then obviously stabilizing mood. So being able to have balanced meals will stabilize all this, and it helps minimize the cortisol response. Because if you're under eating long periods of time, it again becomes a stressor. So meal timing, and this is just some concepts that maybe you do automatically, and maybe you can manipulate some of these. So here's some of the best practices. Eat within a few hours of waking, and I'm always going to say, hey, if you can get a really good protein source for the first meal as well, because it's going to help with the insulin response. So this is another one to be aware of. Avoid long periods of time without eating if you're highly stressed, if you're in a highly stressed environment. Because again, it's going to be compounding with two stressors. This is a technique, and we don't probably talk to a lot of you about this. And you may have hear this, is working out or lifting in a fasting state. Um, is there some, can there be some benefits to it? Yes. I lift not in a completely fasted state, but typically in a fasted state, but I do consume some fluids that have calories in it for during my workout. So it's not a complete fasted state. So I would make sure that you're able to have enough fuel, uh, energy to really focus on a good workout. If your workout is suffering because you're in a depleted state or a fasted state, you may want to manipulate that a little bit. So have some type of calories either during your workout or pre-workout that allows you to have a better workout. So just be aware of that. So leptin and ghrelin, you guys probably have heard of this from different supplements, different uh, concepts, but leptin signals fullness. So it's a response. And that's why we talk about eating. And you've probably heard this concept is slowing down how fast you're consuming food, which I struggle with. If you slow down, the consumption, drink more fluids or water, chewing, those are all concepts that allows your leptin signals to kick in. So that way we don't overconsume. Because if you eat really quick, there's a delay in a signal for that response. And we may feel, even though we've consumed enough calories, we may still feel hungry because that response is not kicked in. So, and then ghrelin going to signal the hunger. Erratic eating will disrupt both these. So you'll be all over the place with uh, the natural responses. So that's what I kind of talked about earlier, and we'll talk a little bit more about. Your body's going to like consistency. So Again, consistent meal timing improves hunger regulation. So both those triggers reduces binge eating. So if you cycle where you go extended period of time without eating and you become extremely hungry, a lot of times people can't turn that off and they'll overconsume. And then understanding what hunger cues are, and it's okay to have hunger cues. It's okay to have feel hungry. That's a concept where it's okay to have those responses and not always act on them because a lot of times what we want to do is we want to have some type of caloric restriction, and you may have windows of time where if it's 2 hours in between meals, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of hunger cues, and that's okay. Okay, so trust those and listen to your body. So why does structure? Uh, why is structure going to be so important instead of having everything perfect, right? Your body's going to really prefer predictability. It likes consistency, almost like creatures of habit. But it also, if we can stay consistent, I talked about this, I think last week, 5, 7, 14 days. You're giving those signals back to your body. The hormonal stability is going to be better if you're consistent like that. Um, and it's going to create a better environment for you to be successful with fat loss. So that structure is going to pull down the hormonal stress, obviously decision fatigue. We want to keep it simple as possible. And then the cycle of overeating can be reduced as well. So and again, you hear me talk about this a lot, and it's no secret. So, and I'll talk about snacks and stuff too, because that's not everybody has that within their plan, and that's okay. 3 meal minimum. You know, some people can't have more than 3 meals, some people not, but we kind of try to simplify that. 3 meal minimum, optional snack if needed. Again, that's really specific. That's why our program is built for you guys individually. So if somebody say, "Well, I don't snack," well, that's because your coach said and put it in place. And so there's different concepts and reasoning. You can still get from point A to point B and see success doing either or, but there's some understanding and triggers and conceptual things that we do and put in place based upon client. So each meal, again, we you want a protein anchor. What am I consuming at this meal that's protein based? Preferably if it's a meal, again, if we can get the women up to 25 to 30 grams, or high fiving. The guys I coach, I push it, if we're pushing up to 40, 50 grams. Sometimes like for breakfast, I try to push it up to in that 50 marker point, sometimes 60. That's what I do. Again, that's based upon individuals and individual needs. Another tool that we probably don't use enough is fiber. What does your fiber consumption look like? Fiber is going to help in a multitude, and it's a healthy fiber. It's going to help with your digestion. Obviously, you want to keep your water intake up anytime you push your fiber up. It's going to help stabilize blood sugar response and energy response. So all those are really, really good. So fiber is a tool that probably can be used more. So and then the carbs, fats, based upon really activity. I know a lot of clients ask, my fat content. They get concerned about their fat content being too high. Anytime your protein goes up, you're going to see your fat content go up naturally. Now, there's ways, and you have to be really, really diligent to keep that fat content a little bit lower when your protein goes up. But if it does go up, no worries. Okay. Consumption of fat can really help with stabilizing some of the hunger responses as well. So carbs, carbs are going to be energy, right? So fueling the body for energy, muscle contraction, workouts, recovery, all can be part of the manipulating with your carbs. And I obviously touched on this a little bit to help with because you're coming out of a fasting state, and breakfast is so key. Unfortunately, the American diet pushed over into carb-based breakfast, and I kind of grew up on that. Some cereals, pancake. Oatmeal is going to be a little bit better because obviously you have the fiber content. It's a little bit heavier, but even then, you really want to kind of think about how can I get 25 to 30 grams of protein. Again, for men, it's going to be higher in for that first meal because we're coming out of a fasting state from the night before. And if you can introduce that protein, it's just going to help with stabilizing hunger responses, energy, your insulin and blood sugar. It's so good, for that. So again, if we can control our insulin and get our insulin better, and again, there's a multitude of ways to get your insulin better. It's going to allow other components to work better within the system. Not only your energy, but the fat loss and your hunger responses. All that is going to get better if you have better blood sugar response. It's going to help with reducing your cortisol levels as well. Because again, we're in a fasting state where that is a stress marker. So, and it's going to help control your appetite because all the other components that I just talked about. So this is going to be based upon individual when we go into training with in workouts and nutrition in general. So some people, I'll give you a couple examples personally. I used to struggle with, you know, hypoglycemia really. So I could not do fasting workouts for the longest time. And I would always have to have like some type of sports drink during my workout because my blood sugar would just bottom out and I would just feel awful from the muscle contraction. After manipulating and changing and trying different techniques over the years, my insulin response got better. So I was able to, you know, get a more stable blood sugar response. But so for training, you got to do what's best for you and what does that look like for you? So I will give you some concepts because there's certain structures that you want around training. So you want to make sure that you have the energy. I just talked about this, have the energy to do a good workout. So if you're really low in calories and low in carbs, well, your workout is going to suffer because muscle contraction uses a lot of carbohydrate. It's there to, muscle glycogen. It gets utilized quickly. So if you don't have the energy to do a good workout, okay, again, what's the concept of where are we at? So underfueling is going to raise your cortisol. It's going to slow recovery, increase fat retention. So making sure that you have enough energy to work out, getting in your protein and keeping your protein markers high because protein is going to help with the recovery aspect. Now, carbs can help with the recovery aspect as well, because if you're really low, which I don't think we have anybody really, really low, I'm talking 25 grams below. If you're in a certain cut, and I've done this personally, and when you're under that 25-gram marker point, your workouts really take a beating. It just is what it is, and you'll have to take your stress response, your heart rate, and everything. Your recovery in between sets will take longer if you're really really low carb. So, but carbs can be manipulated based upon again individual. So here's some other concepts with around nutrition and sleep. Late night grazing increases stress. It can increase the stress response. So balanced dinner, again, protein, carb, fats should improve sleep, reduces nighttime cravings as well because you stabilize that insulin. Now, if you have some hunger responses when you go to bed, try to drink some water and then see if you can go to bed or go to sleep with your regular routine. If you have to have some type of calories or consume some type of calories, again, I would do a protein with a small amount of carbohydrates, if you had to. So, common signs of some of the hormonal disruption based upon nutrition, your energy is always crashing, intense craving, poor sleep, fat loss resistance. So, these can appear, you just have to be aware of some of these components. So, again, we try to set you up in a format that we're protecting a lot of these hormonal responses based upon stress management, your movement patterns. What I'm saying is walking instead of doing high intensity cardio because movement's good. And then, what's your nutrition like, protein look like, where's your resistance training? All those are going to be impactful for your hormone response. So, um, what can fix it? Obviously, more protein, better meal timing, consistent structure. The structure is going to be important. And so here's some of the things that we see that some of our clients go through or struggle with: skipping meals, eating too little during the day, saving calories for night. Now, there is situations where, hey, we're going to tell you if you have social things, you're going to consume more calories at a certain point. If you do that one day, it's not going to hurt. It's when somebody's doing it on a consistent basis. So, and then another thing, over fasting while stressed. Fasting is going to impact the hormonal response in women even more than it does men. So there's some time windows, and fasting can be used as a tool, but it's not a fix-all. You have to have your foundational really tight before you. We really try to coach fasting. So here's obviously a 7 day structure that you would want to mimic. Uh, Eat three structured meals daily. Again, protein eat at every meal. What does that look like? Is it around that 25, 30 grams? Again, a little bit higher for the men I coach. Limiting grazing. So you just want to have those windows of eating. And then you want to observe energy, hunger, and sleep. What does that look like? Are you managing those well? Are they consistent? Because if you have a lot of disruption with these last, you need to track some of this, or you can write it down on a daily basis based upon what you have going on from your workouts, your nutrition, your sleep, and that's why we have this app to monitor all this. We put all the pieces together. Again, consistency over perfection. Hormones are going to respond to patterns, and we need to stack that. So, 5 day, 7 day, 14 day, um, because consistency is going to be key, and consistency is going to impact those hormonal responses, and it's going to help accelerate your process and getting to your goal more efficiently. So it's not a single meal. So if you have a meal that's off kilter, it didn't fall within your calorie range or macro goals, it's not going to ruin everything. It's when you compound that, when you do that on a consistent basis. So we want to have those patterns consistent as much as possible. So obviously, and you guys are doing this within the app, you want to create consistency with your meal structure. What does it look like for you? Because each of us have, our go-tos in protein and our go-tos in carbs and fats. We are pretty cyclical. We're creatures of habit. We typically stay within the certain ranges of food. Now, obviously, sometimes when we're outside our environment, we may consume foods that are abnormal with our regular structure. So again, prioritize protein early. It's preferably your first meal. Reduce unstructured eating, so the grazing component all over the place. Track your energy, hunger, and sleep. What does it look like? How are you feeling? Uh, and that may fluctuate because if you have some stress that comes, and stress does exist. There's you know certain things that yeah you're going to worry about that cause stress. Uh, if a person has a lot more stress or is carrying a lot more stress, it can impact some of these components, specifically your energy, hunger, and sleep. All can be impacted by your stress response. So try to track that, be more aware. Uh, that way you can make a better decision and uh, maneuver and manipulate, the structure uh, of nutrition to help impact your results quicker. So, and that was the last slide I had there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it over and stop the share here and then open it up to see if there's any specific questions. If you have, you can throw them out there, and then I'll try to answer them as best as possible and or get resources to help you guys out. I know we had a few of you fall off that couldn't stay on the call, but that's okay. Zero sugar products. Um, that really depends. A lot of times, what we're seeing when they try to pull the sugar is they will replace the sugar with something that's not necessarily um, the most healthy in some formats. Um, so yeah, I would say you want to be aware of that. And there's some other products where they can pull the sugar down, and yeah, it falls between the line. It's not going to be harmful. It reduces the amount of that sugar you're consuming, which I always think is can be a win-win. It really depends on what the products are. Because of what we've seen in the 80s, and I laughed about this for a long time, and I know they're trying to they flip their food guide pyramid upside down, which you know I, I've been in coaching in this industry for you know um, 25, almost 30 years, and uh, we've been preaching against our food guide pyramid for a long time. And in the 80s, I'll get to the topic, sorry. And in the 80s, in early, I should say early 90s, probably really, what they did is they flipped fat like this too. So what they did is they started saying, reduce fat, reduce fat, reduce fat. Well, the research and study that they were going off of was wrong. And they were telling you, or what they were doing is they were pulling fat content, which is fat's not bad. A type of fat can be. They were pulling the fat content out of the product and replacing it with more harmful products. Did they know? Maybe, maybe not. But what it did, it created this no fat rage that went on for multiple years, and it was not necessarily healthy. So they started putting a lot of other chemicals and replacing the fat with sugars and other chemicals that were actually made it worse. So it really depends on what type of product, on low sugar or no sugar. Um, is there ones that are good and fall between the lines? 100%. So hopefully that answers your question some. I look at it like if it's in a more natural state, it's probably going to be better. If it's manipulated a lot, they have to do some type of chemical manipulation to the product, and it depends on what the product is. So that's kind of my broad thing with that. I would have to look at the specifics for you, and we could always, if you wanted to share certain ones, we can always um, help navigate and answer questions for you on zero sugar products.
Okay, can
'Cause-
you hear me, Tony?
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. This is Yvonne.
Yeah.
Um, so I just started with you guys
Yep.
last week,
Yep.
and I'm already feeling a lot better.
Awesome.
So Aaron's been very, very supportive in getting me there.
Yes.
And I'm glad I hopped on today because I want to ask about some of those Chobani yogurts, some of the coffee creamers. I don't tend to buy them often, but
Yeah.
once in a while, if it's the last thing that's available, I might grab it because I have a daughter who I want her to eat more yogurt.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion about things like that?
I mean, yogurt. So what we do is we buy the full fat Greek yogurt, and how we manipulate it. Now, I will say this: no, Aaron may buy some of those that have a little bit more sugar for our kids, because obviously the Greek yogurts is pretty bitter, specifically if it doesn't have any sugar. So again, navigating those situations, if the kids are getting more natural sugar from fruit, I don't have a problem with it. uh, it's when, the products have a lot of added sugar to make it taste better. So you just got to watch that based upon grams. Now, obviously, if if they're not going to eat it, like it's harder for us to get the kids to eat Greek yogurt. So what we do with it is we'll cut up strawberries, blueberries, and or we may take some honey and put a little bit of honey to sweeten it up, so that way they're getting their sugar, but it's more from a natural state.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah, I mean, there's just way. Obviously, with kids, it's always a battle. I mean, ideally, you would want them to eat. The interesting part with our kids is they used to eat really well, and as they've gotten a little bit older, they go through these picky phases, and it becomes a little bit more of a challenge to keep some of the chemicals in sugars out of their system. But
Absolutely. I
but
can
it's
relate to that
yeah,
one.
it's just a battle, and hey, we're not going to win them all, but if we can get it better, I think that's always going to be a move in the right direction. We try to educate our kids too. We try to talk about, hey, the reason we're telling you to eat protein is it's healthy for your body. You're going to have more energy. It's going to get you the sensation of being full. So our kids are funny like that. Our son is a really picky eater. I was when I was a kid. So it's a battle with him. Our daughter is not so much. So she's more of she will try different things. Uh, it, so the yogurts are great with him. I would just watch on added sugar and the percentage of sugar, because sometimes obviously it get pretty high because they'll add that to make it taste better.
Right. Okay. And what is
And
your opinion about coffee creamers?
so I don't use them. I just used, well, the creamer I use is half and half.
Okay.
I just keep it simple like that. I don't even, so it doesn't have any added um, substances.
Okay. So
Yeah,
just plain coffee creamer, half and half, or even
yeah,
like heavy cream or
yeah,
something.
yep. I'm not. That's fat. So again, that's where I was talking about. You're okay with just watch the cal. Obviously, I want to watch the calories. You don't want to let the calories be pushed up too high. But typically, that's not. Because fat is not necessarily bad for you. So when it's like half and half like that, or even a full fat, as long as you're not consuming too many to push your calories up, I don't have, there's not an issue. I would rather have you have that product in a more of a natural state than them adding sugar or other substances to make it taste a certain way. So we kind of stay away from the creamers as long as they're just half and half, straight, in more natural state.
Okay, that makes sense. I've
Yeah.
been drinking it black for quite a
Yeah,
while,
yeah. So the
but
other
once
thing
in
is,
a
if you want
while.
to if you
Yeah.
want to pull some of the bitterness out of it, obviously, a half and half, or a little bit of a natural source of sugar, like a honey or a agave or something. Just like there's ways to do it to pull some of or add some flavor to it without bringing a lot of other chemicals in.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, this helps. I'm sure once we hang up the call, I'll have more questions, but I'll save it for
Yeah,
another time.
yeah, never hesitate. I mean, obviously, you have us in the app too. If there's other specifics with the zero sugars, like you come across, never had to hesitate to throw them in here. And obviously, some of the products we have to do a little bit more investigation, right? To,
Right.
to to see how they make them. What are they putting in to change? What are they putting in to pull down or pull out the sugar content? So there's some of the stuff can get a little bit tricky, and how they label it and how they maneuver the product. So
Okay.
if there's certain ones that you come across you want more guidance on, yeah, just let us know and we'll help you out.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then one more thing.
Hmm.
In in the spirit of talking about all of these products or, your protein, carbs, and fats. So on days that I'm going to work out on Monday,
Hmm.
Wednesday, Friday, for a pre-workout meal, um, so I found that, let me see, what day was it? Yesterday, I ate breakfast and then I waited till midday to do my workout, and it,
Okay.
it actually helped me get through, and it was a pretty balanced meal. Should I be doing anything specific or different on those days that I'm going to work out?
I you know each person, and I kind of gave you an example of myself. Each person's a little bit different uh, in that regard. As long as you feel you have the energy to do a good workout, to put the effort into the resistance and to push yourself from an intensity standpoint. That's what we want because with resistance training, we're building a foundation for long-term success. We're building your metabolic process up. We're helping add some lean tissue because that's going to help stabilize your insulin response and help with us getting you into a area where fat oxidation, getting your fat percentage of body fat down.
Okay.
So sometimes people may need a little bit more carbs on the days that they lift because with a muscle contraction, you use a lot of carbohydrate. Muscle glycogen, it's a carbohydrate, and you deplete those stores sometimes. So that's one thing that some people may need a little bit more carbohydrate when they're on the days that they lift. Just listen to your body and how your workout goes. And
Okay.
if that was fine for you, then keep doing what you're doing. Now, obviously, we set certain protein parameters, grams of protein for you guys to hit.
Hmm.
A, it's going to help with all the other hormonal responses, but B, it has amino acids to help with muscle recovery as well. So there's a multitude of reasons why we have you guys consume X amount of protein because it helps with repair of the muscle damage is done from lifting as well.
Okay, so even on days that I lift, should I do the 25, 30 grams of protein and maybe
I
should
would
I
just
still eat
so
the
I would just
semi?
follow exactly what you're doing, like the parameters right now, and see how your body responds.
Okay,
Because if you feel good, if you feel fine, there's no reason to kind of I don't feel like you have to consume more carbs just because you lifted. I
okay,
I always tell people if they feel really good, your energy's consistent on the days you lift. Now, what you may notice eventually, this happens with males a lot quicker, is as they get into resistance training, their hunger response starts to kick up a little bit. And the reason that happens is because you put a metabolic stressor on the body, which is natural. And that's going to naturally tell your body or sense, hey, I want to consume more food. And it becomes, okay, are we using our enough protein and carbs to kind of, tamp down that response and fuel the body properly? That's one thing you may notice. Again, guys notice it quicker because they carry more muscle mass.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't
Yeah.
think I have any more questions now. I'm just following the path. This will be my first full week,
Good.
and I'm looking forward to my call with Erin on Friday.
Yes. Awesome. Hey, we're in the app, so never hesitate. That's what we're here for.
Okay. Well, you have a good day, Tony. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Yep. You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.